And we are live. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good to be together with you. We're going to spend the next hour together. Thank you for coming to this webinar, Building Supports for Children with Disabilities at Home and in the Classroom. My name is Sylvia Angel, and I'm an early intervention specialist and also a mom of two boys. One of my children has additional needs. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. And if you can hear me, if you can see me, why don't you say something to me in the chat? We're broadcasting in YouTube. That's something we haven't done before. So I know that it's a platform. It's a little bit different than, Zoom, the platform that we normally use. So again, if you can see me, if you can hear me, say hello in the chat. And maybe you can tell me where are you based? I'm speaking to you from Arklow, County Wicklow, and I have two more people with me tonight. I can see messages coming in. Good evening, everyone. Hello, all good here. Glad to be here. That's so lovely. So that means that everything is working. Wonderful. And tell me where you are. Where are you based? Where are you based? Where are you watching from? Great. A lot of people saying hello, and it seems that, yeah, everything is working. So tonight I'm going to present this webinar with two other colleagues, Anna and Ellie. Hello, Anna. Hello, Ellie. And I'm going to let Anna and Ellie introduce themselves. Hi, Anna. And make sure you unmute yourself. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Hi, Sylvia. So I'm Anna Maguire, and I'm a speech and language therapist, and I've worked with children with additional needs for 12 years now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna. And again, we're going to present this webinar together. And Ellie. Hi, Ellie.
Hi everyone, glad to be here tonight. My name is Ellie Horgan. I'm an occupational therapist that's neurodivergent that has been working with children with disabilities and additional needs for the last 3 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here with me tonight. And Aisling Towie is a psychologist who is also in our team. And you're going to see Aisling later on. She can't be with us tonight, but we recorded a video for you. And we'll play that video later on. So you are very, very welcome. More messages coming in. People watching from Mayo, from Dublin, from Wicklow, from Kildare, from Offaly, from Dublin. Wow, we're all connected. Brilliant. Wonderful. Okay, so let's get started. And just to let you know that we are recording this webinar in case we're all at home, the kids are at home. So in case there's any interruptions, just to reassure you that we are recording the webinar and it's going to be available in YouTube later on. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share with you my slides. So again, the webinar tonight is Building Supports for Children with Disabilities at Home and in the Classroom, and is a webinar for educators and parents. So you are in the right place. I want to make sure that this webinar is for you. So you're in the right place. If you are a teacher, an early years educator, a teacher, an SNA, working with children with disabilities, or you are a parent, you are in the right place. If you feel you lack specialized training, especially when I work with educators and teachers, they have training in child development, in teaching strategies, but when it comes to teaching children with disabilities, that is not part of the training courses, and people often feel that they don't have enough training. If you have limited access to a specialist, and we know that these days, especially if you're a family, you know that access to disability services, there's long wait list, and as well accessing private practitioners, that can be quite tricky as well. If you find challenging dealing with everyday situations, and maybe you want ideas and to make sure that you can deal with those situations in the best way possible. If you feel you have insufficient resources and support, and if you feel alone in this journey, you're not alone. There's a lot of people. We're all in this journey as parents, as educators. You're not alone, but sometimes it can feel quite we may feel isolated. So you are in the right place. So it's what you are going to learn tonight: how you can equip yourself with a specialized knowledge, how to integrate practical interventions into your daily routine. And I'm all about sharing practical advice. I'm going to share with you 6 steps to effective classroom and home support, because one of the biggest issues is that there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes kind of trying to filtering all that and to see how we can implement all that theory and put it into practice is the challenge. So I'm going to talk to you about 6 steps. And at the end of the webinar, I'm going to speak to you about how to access a year-round support network through the Circle program. And some of you are already familiar with the Circle program. It's a program that I teach every year. So I'm going to speak to you about that at the end of the webinar. And this webinar may not be the best fit for you if you believe that it's not your responsibility to support children with special educational needs. Sometimes, that's quite rare, but sometimes I might, meet teachers or educators in mainstream classrooms, and they feel they don't have a role supporting the child with additional needs. So if that's your case, this may not be the best webinar for you. If you're not currently engaged in supporting children with disabilities, because all the information is very hands-on, so it's for people who are working with children with disabilities or parents. However, I know some of you have been in touch with me during the week, and I know that some of you, you're not working with a child with additional needs right now, but you will be in September, and that's why you are here, so you're in the right place. If you think that experts and only experts can provide intervention for children with disabilities, is something that experts can do, but parents and educators cannot do. So if that's your belief, again, I'm going to challenge this tonight. If your work primarily involves teenagers and adults, this training may not directly apply to those contexts. I'm an early intervention specialist, and I'm always thinking, because my experience is mainly with young children, and as well like the first few years in schools from 3 years of age till 8 years of age. So I'm thinking of that age group. So the strategies that we are going to share, sometimes people working with adults and teenagers join our webinars. You may find information useful, but again, we're always thinking of that younger group of children. So if you stay with me until the end of the webinar, I have 2 surprises for you, but you have to stay until the end, and then I'm gonna tell you what they are. So let's get started. So before I dive into any more content, I want to share with you, but I want to mention that all the ideas that we're going to share with you today, they are based on what's considered best practice in early intervention, and they're also based on up-to-date research, but also our own personal experience. Okay, myself as a parent and educators, I'm always looking at, there's a lot of information out there, so how can I how can I put all that amazing information into practice? Sometimes there's information that seems contradictory, but it's just because there's different approaches. So it's all about understanding the different approaches and deciding which approach is the best for us. So if you've done courses with me before, you know that I'm always kind of very looking for that kind of hands-on information that we can actually implement with our students or our children. A little bit about my background. As you can hear from my accent, and you may know, I'm from Barcelona originally. In college, I studied social studies, and I did a bachelor's degree in psychology of education. And very early on in my career, I had the opportunity to work in early intervention with children with Down syndrome. And at the time, with the team that I was working with, we used something called the Portage model of support for children and families, for children with disabilities and their families. And the Portage model worked with the idea that the professional is going to support the parents so the parents can support their child. And always what I've done is I've done a lot of home visits, working with children and playing with children on the floor and doing lots of activities to support their early development, but always with one of the parents present. Because the idea is I'm going to share the knowledge with you, the skills, the strategies, so you can support your child when I'm not there. So early intervention doesn't just happen that hour when the professional is with the child, but early intervention can happen 24/7. I've also worked with a lot of preschools, so children could attend their community preschools, and a lot of primary schools as well. So the idea is to build empowering parents, empowering teachers, to build a network of support for the child. So intervention, I don't see intervention as much as a block of therapy sessions. That sometimes is necessary because we might be working on different goals, and sometimes that we might do that. But early intervention more as a building a supportive environment where that is going to understand the child's needs, respond to those needs, and stimulate the child's learning 24/7. So that's how I kind of always worked in early intervention. Now, fast forward 10 years, my first son was born, Sebastian, and at the age of 2, we saw signs of autism. At the age of 2, we saw signs of autism. So being influenced by the Portage model of intervention, I knew that my husband John and myself could help Sebastian. I knew, because that's what I had been doing all those years, supporting families so they could support their children. So I knew that we could support Sebastian. I know that I was very fortunate because I was working in early intervention, so I already had all those tools. So things that I did immediately when we saw signs of autism at the age of 2. So one of the things that I did is I immediately introduced visual supports. When initially we thought that Sebastian was deaf, I have hearing problems myself, so we thought he was deaf, and then we realized that he wasn't, and again, we saw signs of autism. So he was not responding to anything we were saying to him. If we were calling his name, if we were saying, "Do you want a biscuit? Daddy's here," he wouldn't respond to that. But the minute we introduced visual supports, he started understanding what we were communicating to him. Then I also introduced what's called communication systems, and I taught him to communicate by using pictures, by using hand signs, and that reduced his frustration, because then he could communicate effectively and he could tell me, "I want to eat, I want to go to the garden, I want to watch TV." He started being able to communicate his wants or his needs. And I suppose the fact that he could understand what we were saying and he started communicating with us, we started seeing more interactions with, obviously, that was so lovely for us to see. Then I set up a kind of a more set routine for him so he could understand what was coming next, so he knew what to expect. I supported his sensory needs. And sometimes advice, obviously, by different professionals. I remember Sebastian, before going to bed, he used to jump on the bed and it would take hours before he fell asleep. And then I started putting supports in place. So we got a trampoline for the garden, and in the afternoon, we would do a number of activities. So then going to bed, the bedtime routine became easier. So overall, it was more about understanding his needs and providing supports. And again, I know that I was fortunate because of my professional background, to be able to put those supports in place. So that was at the age of 2. When he was about 3 years and a half, then we started receiving intervention. And at that point, I met a lot of other families that were in the same journey as we were, other children the same age as Sebastian, and I realized that those kids were 3.5, 4 years of age and just starting to receive interventions. And I realized how fortunate we were that we could actually start supporting Sebastian at the age of 2. So it's important, very important, that we all understand and know that families need and deserve to receive intervention as soon as possible. It continues to be a challenge because of the long wait list for assessment and intervention, but that's why we're doing this webinar here today, because I want to share what I did with you so you can pick up ideas, and hopefully that will help you work with your child or your students. Then we had access to an early intervention class, and Sebastian spent 2 years in an early intervention class. And then he attended our local school. the local school has an autism class, so he was in the autism class. Also, lots of opportunities for interaction and spending time in the mainstream class, but I suppose his needs were best met in the autism class. He had a very positive experience, in primary school, and now Sebastian is a teenager. He's taller than I am, believe it or not, and he's in secondary school. He's on his first year in secondary school. He's in a mainstream class with a full-time SNA with him, and he couldn't have done it without his SNA, but it has been a very successful year. His teachers sent us very lovely comments about Sebastian, how pleasant he was and how interested he was in learning. And the most important thing is that he has enjoyed his first year in secondary school. And I know that the journey is different for different people. Again, different children have different challenges, different strength. The journey is gonna be different for everyone. But what's important is that we put supports in place for children, and so that children can develop to their full potential, so children have a good experience in school, and so families can have a good quality of life. My personal life has obviously had an impact on my professional life. So fast forward to today, I've been supporting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families over the last 20 years. With many of those families, actually, we had a very close relationship, because in early intervention, I tend to work with families for a number of years, and I have to say that it's just I absolutely love working with families and with children. I have collaborated with many preschools and primary schools working with children with disabilities, and 20 years ago, many of those preschools and schools, they were quite anxious because it was the first time they worked with a child with a disability. They had been working with kids with learning difficulties, but not learning disabilities. And a lot of them were quite nervous, anxious, wondering, is this the best place? How can I offer support? But I was there with my team. I always work as part of a multidisciplinary team, and together we worked with the schools and the preschools to provide information, guidance, support, so that they could again themselves support children with disabilities. Myself and my team gave confidence and equipped educators and parents to navigate challenge. And 3 years ago, I developed the Circle program. That it's a program that I suppose I always looked at, the framework that I use when I support families and schools, and I put that together within the Circle program. And it's a program that delivers practical and personalized advice to educators, and some families as well have joined the program over the years. So I know that, again, supporting children with disabilities, sometimes it can feel, daunting, because we may feel we don't have the information, we are not sure what is the right thing to do, and we definitely need access to knowledge, we need access to training. But it has been a beautiful journey for me personally to see, when parents and educators access that guidance and that knowledge, the transformation that it can happen, for families and for schools. So I want to know that you can do it with the right support and the right information, that you too have the power to make a change. I want you to know that as parents, we can make a change, that as educators, we can make a change. Yes, we may need that additional support, but there is so much that we can do. So I want to talk to you about that framework that I'm using when I'm supporting families and educators. And when I teach the Circle program, we work with that framework, but I'm going to share it with you tonight, okay? Because I want to be able to support as many people as possible. So these are the 6 steps to building supports for children, whether you're building those supports at home as a family, or in an early years in a preschool, or in a primary school. So the first thing you need to do is understand the needs of your child, or get to know the child that you're working with. Look at the environment and create an environment where the child is ready to learn. Look at communication supports, supporting language comprehension, supporting students communicating, understand sensory processing and sensory needs, support behavior and know how to respond to behavior that we might find challenging, and also it's very, very important, support children building relationships with others and being included within their families, within the school, and within the community. So this is what we're going to talk about this evening. So let's start with the first step, understanding your child or understanding your student. Why is it important that we understand that we get to know our child, our student? This is very, very important because all the supports that we are going to put in place are going to be based on the child's needs, strengths, personality. But the adaptations are going to be informed by that. So we need to learn about the child's diagnosis. If there's a diagnosis, there's going to be a small percentage of children that maybe have a diagnosis like a global developmental delay, or the kids is going to be a little bit more specific, like autism, Down syndrome, or other diagnoses. So as an educator, as a parent, educate yourself and try to learn as much as possible about your child's diagnosis. Myself, I've been studying autism for many, many years, and still today I absolutely love listening to autistic people and learning from them so I can understand my son better, I can understand my students better. But as you know, it's always going to be a spectrum. With autism or with any other diagnosis, it's all going to be a spectrum. So children are going to share some traits, but as well, kids with the same diagnosis may be very different one from another. That's why we need to get to know their strength. What are they good at? The areas that they need help with, and also their learning style. When I look at especially primary education, a lot of the teaching happens orally, but sometimes we have students that are really good visual learners. So if we know that, then we can make adaptations and incorporate a lot of visual supports. That's just a little example. Then we need to get to know children and their interests. What are they interested in? Because if we know that and we incorporate their interest into our teaching, they're going to be more engaged and motivated in what we are working on in the classroom. It's also important to take into account their personality. And I find that when we work with children with disabilities, we tend to look at the diagnosis, but not so much at their personality. But it's very important to take it into account because, let me give you an example. If I'm working with a child who is who's highly independent, and I want to put a lot of a structure and have a very strict routine, and so that child may not actually feel comfortable with that level of structure, and there's going to be a clash. So that's not going to work. So I need to take into account their personality so that the supports that I'm gonna put in place are gonna match their personality. Sometimes we have students who are extroverted and very, very sociable, and they are motivated by the group. They just want to be part of the group and work with other children. So we need to take that into account. And there's one more thing we need to think of: the environment, the classroom, or the family dynamics. Why do we need to take that into account? Again, because, for example, if I'm supporting a child in a preschool that is more of a play school, it's free play, it's child-led, and then I'm trying to bring in a high level of structure, that's not good. That's not going to match that environment. So we really need to take and respect to the dynamics that happen in that environment, in your school, in your classroom, or if you are a family as well, that all the supports that are put in place match really well the family dynamics. Okay, this is all really important when you are planning supports. Now, let's look at step number 2. So then we're going to look at the environment. And when I say the environment, I actually mean the physical environment, looking at the classroom and how are we going to organize the classroom, or looking at home, how are we going to organize the playroom or the child's bedroom, or little things that we're going to kind of, I suppose, rejuggle in the house. So why do we want to look at the environment? Because we want to do 3 things. First of all, we want to create a safe space. When I mean safe space, I mean, first of all, safe, like some children may be a flight risk. So we need to make sure that it's an actual safe space where the child can be safe. But also in terms of some children, for example, have sensory sensitivities, and they may be in a classroom where maybe the light feels too bright, or there's too much noise, there's too much movement, there's too much happening, and they are in high alert. The child is not relaxed, is not ready to learn. So we need to create a space where the child actually feels safe from lots of different points of view, that feel safe, they are relaxed. So now they are ready to listen and to learn and to work in that environment. And we also want to create environments that promote independence. And this is really, really important. So we're going to look at developing routines so children know what's going to happen next and what they are supposed to do next. Look at the room layout as well. I'm thinking of some preschools may have a little corner where they do circle time, and then there's another place where they do, free play. So then when the child is in the different spaces, again, they know what's expected of them. How you organize the materials, it's also very, very important. Let me give you a couple of examples. For example, so what you need to take into account with the environment is you want the environment to speak to the child from the point of view that, I'm looking at the environment, I'm looking at the work, and I know what I'm supposed to do. Let me give you an example. In Montessori, there's different work trays, and one of the work trays may be a pegboard. And normally there's a pegboard, and then there's a bowl with 100 pegs. Some children will know, okay, I take that, I put pegs on the pegboard, and when I'm tired and tidy up, and I get a new piece of work. But that activity is not showing the child that there's a clear end. If instead of 100 pegs you have 10 or 20, now the child can see when all the pegs are on the pegboard, the activity is finished. Again, the activity itself, the way it's structured, it's speaking, it's telling the child what they are supposed to do. And it's the same with work systems. Some of you may be familiar with that already. You may have like a box with what we call it the start box, where there's different pieces of work, so the child knows I have to take those pieces of work, complete a piece of work, put it in the finish box. Then I take the next one, and when the start box is empty, it means that now I'm done. So how you organize the environment is very important, because what you want is the child to work independently as much as possible. And also in the classroom, it's important to provide visual supports. A lot of you are familiar with those. You're using pictures like visual schedules or a first and then board, or you may use a timer. And I see a lot of you using those kind of visual supports. What is important to know about visual supports, I often see that once children get used to the classroom, they know the routine, they know how to operate in the classroom, very often people stop using those visual supports. So what I'm going to suggest to you is keep those visual supports there. And what you have to do is actually yourself step back and let the child work independently with the visual supports. Because ultimately what we want is children to be able to work with calendars, diaries, to-do lists, that they are working independently with all those supports. Okay, so your goal is to encourage children to become as independent as possible in the classroom. So the third step is going to be support language in the classroom, and Anna is going to speak to us about that. Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you, Sylvia. So, first of all, when we're thinking about supporting language in the classroom or at home, it's important to find out more about your child's communication skills. And as Sylvia mentioned earlier, we usually break down communication into receptive language or comprehension, which means the understanding of language, and also expressive communication. And this is getting your message across. And it doesn't always have to be speech, as you know. It can include all modes of communication, such as love signs, natural gestures, such as I'm doing, body language, facial expression, pictures, objects, even devices. So there's loads of ways to get your message across there. So that's usually the two ways we divide language into. And so to find out more about your child's skills, chat to, play with, and observe your child, just like Sylvia mentioned, to see more about their interests and their personality. So it's good to learn more about what they're interested in a general sense and not just language at this stage, because maybe they have not been able to practice all their communication skills yet. So it's good to know their interests and what they're looking at and how they're moving around the classroom, so that you know what they may like to communicate about. And for schools, of course, you can chat to the child's family and the school staff from last year to find out some more information. And you can observe how your child understands other adults and children when they use spoken language, maybe love signs, pictures, the visuals, like Sylvia mentioned, body language, a device, gestures, and you can see what helps your child understand more. So, not every child is going to suit each different mode of communication. They might like a combination, they might like certain ones for certain activities. So, see which one suits the child and helps the child in each situation with each person, because it could be different with other adults and it could be different with their peers. Um, and then we can see when, how, and with whom our children communicate themselves. So, with whatever mode of communication they prefer. So, again, like the modes we've mentioned already, maybe they communicate about different things in different ways at different times with different people, and it's okay. We want to value all the forms of communication. So, just see what they like, and it's definitely not going to be a one size fits all, and it's not even going to be one size fits all during the day. So it's really important to know about your child's communication skills. And then we can help our children understand us. So that's about our communication. So it's really important to focus on this. So try to observe and monitor yourself. So some people may talk a bit too fast or use long sentences. So we may need to adapt how we communicate. And that's okay. Everyone communicates differently, and you may need to adapt for different children at different times in more familiar settings and less familiar settings. So it's usually helpful to slow down and use simple language, maybe shorter sentence, and visuals, just like Sylvia talked about. And love may help some children too, and maybe objects. So, and some visuals that people find helpful are the first then boards and visual schedules, like we've mentioned. And these can even be object based. You don't have to use pictures for every single child, because sometimes pictures might be a bit too complicated for some children. So think about objects also. And then maybe if you are reading a story, you can use pictures to help your child understand what's happening in the story. It just doesn't have to be the main items during the day. It could be within the tasks that we are doing. We can use objects or pictures to help our children understand what's going on during a lesson or during activity at home or in preschool. And core boards as well can be very helpful for children to help them understand us. These boards include core vocabulary that would be needed throughout the day. So these are very helpful for children to help them understand us. And then we move on to supporting our children's expressive communication, how they express themselves. And sometimes we may need to support them to do this. So Ensure your child's communication mode of communication or modes of communication, depending on the child, are accessible at all times. So hopefully their love signs will be accessible because it's their body, but make sure that the device or the pictures or the objects are available and accessible to them at all times. And we want to make sure that the children know that all their modes of communication are valued. So we can do this by encouraging everyone to use the modes of communication. So not just the child themselves, but we can encourage them, their classmates and family members to use the language systems as well. So this can be to model how to use the language and also communicating with your child. And this is called aided language stimulation. And this is really helpful to support children communicate. And ensure you give your child opportunities to communicate during the day with different people at different times. And it's good to remember that requesting is only one tiny little bit of communication or one tiny function of communication. There are so many other functions. For example, we can support our children to greet people, to say hello, to ask questions, to tell a joke, to ask Alexa to play some music. So there's loads of different functions of communication as well. So it's great to be able to support our children to express themselves. And now I will pass you on to Ellie, and she's going to talk to you about children with sensory needs and preferences in the classroom and at home.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for all that interesting information. So, yes, I'm going to talk about identifying sensory needs or preferences and how to support that at home and at school. Everybody has sensory preferences. You and I have sensory preferences. Some people love hot coffee, other people love iced coffee, some people love scratchy jumpers, other people need to have super soft cashmere jumpers, and we all have sensory preferences. And it's important when we're working with autistic children or children with sensory needs that we honor those needs and accommodate them as much as possible. So being able to identify those needs is really, really important so that we can support them to maintain that regulation as much as possible. So sensory preferences may include preferring to work in a quieter environment or actually benefiting from being in a noisier environment. For some children, it may be that they like movement or they're a kinesthetic learner, so they need to be on the go in order to focus and participate in the learning happening at class or at home. Some children, their attention may increase if they are allowed to engage in oral sensory stimulation. So for you adults out there, those are the people that are chewing on the tops of their pens while they're listening in here tonight. That's oral sensory stimulation. So each unique child, like we were talking on the spectrum before, will have a unique set of sensory preferences. And it's really important that we honor those sensory preferences at home and at school, because those sensory preferences are at the base of the learning pyramid. So those need to be honored before we can move up the pyramid to attention and focus and participation in learning and everyday life. So in this course, I'd be aiming to help you become kind of a detective and tuning into those unique sensory needs and help you understand where those needs stem from biologically. So that could be understanding if your child is a sensory seeker or avoider. Is their brain over aroused or under aroused? And once you know what that information is, I would then help you to support developing and implementing a unique sensory diet. So a sensory diet is much like an everyday food diet. We generally eat at roughly the same times during the day, and we generally eat the same types of food at that same time. And that food diet allows us to engage and participate and give us the energy to be able to focus and attend to those tasks that we do every day. A sensory diet is very similar. So it's giving you access to those sensory preferences. So it could be using ear defenders, active sitting while we're engaging in learning, or engaging in proprioceptive activities at set times during the day so that we can engage in what we want to learn and what we want to get up to in class and at home. I'll also be discussing the biological background in that, and how you can relate that back to your own everyday functioning. So you'll learn a lot about yourself in this session as well, and how to support your own sensory regulation, because co-regulation, as I'm sure Sylvia will mention later and our psychologist will mention, is very important. So you may learn a lot about yourself. Much like Anna was saying, you'll learn about your own communication styles and preferences. You may learn about your own sensory preferences as well. So I'm going to hand you back to Sylvia to discuss the rest of the programme.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so the next step on that kind of pyramid of support that we are building is to support behavior. So Aisling Towie, clinical psychologist, she's not here with us tonight, but Aisling and I had a conversation, and I'm gonna play a clip of that conversation with you. And I also want to mention that for those of you that may join the Circle program, that Aisling as well is part of the program. So let's have a Hi, Aisling.
Hi,
Hello.
Sylvia.
Hi. So Aisling, so far we've spoken about creating an environment that is supportive for children, where they feel, calm and ready to learn, a classroom that is organized and promotes independence. And then we were talking about communication, sensory issues. So how does behavior ties in all that?
Well, I suppose it ties into all aspects of that. And very often, like when I'm meeting with families or teachers or preschools, the question that will come to me is, oh, Johnny or Mary is, displaying this difficult behavior. So that's maybe how it's presented to me. Johnny is, being disruptive or banging his head off the floor or something like that is happening. But for me, I have to go back and explore with the family or explore with the school, the why of that behavior. And I suppose we're always going back a step. The behavior is just what you see, and it's a bit like an iceberg. We want to go to underneath the sea and see what's underneath that behavior. So that's where, it knits really in very closely to the environment. Is the environment meeting the child's needs? Does the child have the communication supports? Are they trying to communicate something through their behavior? And can we support them to communicate that in a better way through using those communication supports that you've been talking about? Or are they trying to address a sensory need? Sometimes it's really hard to tell what's sensory and what's behavior. So really, like I know when we're talking about these things, I'm talking as a psychologist from the behavioral perspective, the speech and language talking about the communications perspective. But for somebody working with a child, these things aren't separate at all. Like they all kind of overlap together to form the whole picture of the child. So it's kind of unpicking and exploring that. And that's the tricky bit. But I think when you can go underneath and try and look at the factors behind the behavior and getting in there early, that's where you're going to have most success.
Okay, so you're talking about the importance of looking for the cause of that behavior. So, so what's going to be then our starting point once we find out the cause of that behavior?
Well, I think looking at and exploring the reasons behind, the why, and we're thinking about the child as a whole. So you're looking at, their physical health, their emotional needs, their communication needs, their sensory needs, all of that. And if you can meet those needs, and that means coming back a step and being preventative and proactive, doing the thing before the child needs to display the behavior, that's where you're going to have most success. So it's kind of hard when we're just reacting to behavior. Ideally, you don't want to be in that space. And I'm sure any of us as a parent, as in families, as teachers, as SNA, we've all been in that position where we feel like we're chasing a behavior. And it's really, really quite difficult. I think that's when you feel kind of de-skilled and where is this going and am I making it worse? So really, we want to be in that position as little as possible. So what do we need to do to avoid that happening? Well, what we need to do is be proactive, get back a few steps earlier and start to fine-tune our observation and our knowledge. Because if we can recognize beforehand what's going wrong and what's going to happen, then we can intervene and change the course of that behavior. And that's when you experience more success.
Okay, thank you, Aisling. So I really understand that when we're talking about behavioral programs, that we are going to be focused on prevention most of the time rather than reacting to those behaviors.
Yeah, very much, very much.
Okay.
And I think, that's the difficulty. I think if we just focus on behaviors and particularly when there's difficult behaviors, it's really easy to get caught up in that. It can feel very kind of negative and punitive and very isolating for the child and the person trying to react to that behavior. And it can get very circular. And what you might find is that you're managing one behavior really tightly, and then another behavior pops up, and then another. But we're really not thinking about the whole child there and responding to the child in their environment and as part of a bigger picture. And that's why it's so important to combine perspectives from different professionals, different people involved. It's never just one thing. And every child's behavior is different. Like, the child might be doing the same thing, but they all could be doing it for different reasons. So we need to explore that, So it's not a one size fits all, that's for sure, So I'm going to be doing my module in January, and again, hoping to help the participants gain some skills and confidence in that area, because as you said, it really is one of the areas that comes up quite a lot, and I think people get quite burnt out with it. So I think it's really important to have the knowledge and to approach these kind of challenging behaviors, but also recognizing, as I said, that it's kind of different for everyone. So I think people need to get a chance to ask their own individual questions or think about how it relates to them. So I'm really happy to be involved in the online community of sport in the Circle program as well, and answer queries that come up and kind of tie that in to the broader program. As you said, it all overlaps, it's not just we're looking at behavior in January and that's it, throughout, I think we grow our knowledge and our different kind of perspectives and approaches to dealing with these challenges. So I think that'll be a useful way for participants maybe to develop their skills as well and to gain that support, because a lot of it is ongoing support and a support network, because there are challenges in this work. There's no question for everybody. And it doesn't matter how long you've been doing the work, whether you're starting this year or whether you have 20 years experience, that's why we need to build in support. That's essential for everybody, and I think,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Aisling, thank you so much for being with us. And for people that join the Circle program, they'll be able to speak to you again during the course and particularly in January. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sylvia. I really look forward to it. Bye.
Bye. Great. And then we're looking at the last step of that pyramid of support, and it's supporting, fostering friendships and inclusion. It's very important that we think of that from a young age. I want you to know that one of the most significant issues for people with disabilities, regardless of the disability, not only intellectual disabilities, people with disabilities in general, is loneliness and isolation. These tend to be a big issue, again, for people with disabilities. So we want to support relationships, friendships, and inclusion from a young age. I know that sometimes it may feel challenging working with educators. Sometimes we're working with young children that are quite happy playing alone and they're not interested in interacting with other people. But we need to understand that when we talk about inclusion or building friendships, this is a process. So it's important that we break it down and we see little goals that we can work on. And I'm going to give you an example. When my son was in the early intervention class, one of the first things they taught him was to hold hands and walk beside you. And that made a huge difference for us as a family, because as a family we were very isolated. Sebastian was a flight risk, he had no sense of danger, so leaving the house, it was very difficult. We were very much housebound, and they taught him that skill, and that meant that us as a family, we could go out, we could go for a coffee, we could go to the playground. That's just a small step, but it's a small step in the right direction. First of all, we're going to look in at developing skills that support inclusion within the family. Okay, so that can be your starting point. And it's important to understand that by providing opportunities of just being together, that is the first step. Sometimes the kids are going to be together, maybe not interacting with each other. That's okay, but they need to share a space. Then maybe eventually we can look at activities where they interact a little bit. If there's interaction, eventually there's going to be relationships that could turn into friendships, and it's a very gradual process. But especially if you're working with young children, try to break it down, but make sure that you have, I suppose, that you are conscious of how important it is to provide opportunities for, again, building relationships with other people and looking at inclusion. Okay, so these are the 6 steps to building supports for children. Whether you're doing in school or at home, you can put those supports in place following these 6 steps. Okay, so how can you build the 6-step foundation of support for children with disabilities? So I've shared that information with you. We are recording this webinar. It's going to be on YouTube, so you can come back to this video and review the 6 steps, take screenshots of the different layers, and do your research and gradually put that foundation of support together for your child or your students. It's important to understand that with children with disabilities, sometimes we focus on particular problems that we may have. Maybe there's behaviors that we find challenging. Maybe the child is frustrated because the child can't communicate effectively. But it's important that, first of all, you build that foundation of support. And that alone might actually resolve some of these challenges that you have. That alone might do that. But then once that is established, if there's certain issues and challenges, and there will be, because there's always, again, parenting, educating children, there's always going to be things that are challenging us as parents and educators, then you can fine-tune interventions. But it's important that the supports are there. So you can do your own research, or you can walk this path with us. You can do it guided by professionals and supported by a community within the Circle program. So what is the Circle program? The Circle program is a program that I developed a number of years ago with a framework that I use when I work with families and schools. And I'm giving a kind of a step-by-step guide to people so they can build this foundation of support. So it's structured to take you by the hand and guide you in building those supports for your child or your student. It is designed so you can access the professional support you need when you need it, and you can access as well peer support, so you feel confident supporting children and navigating challenges when they arise. I'm gonna hold you by the hand and guide you step by step, but I know that a lot of you here have a lot of experience too, so you probably don't need to be, held by the hand. So that is a space where we can work together. Again, this job is, as parents and educators, it is challenging. So it's important that we are not alone and we can join forces in this community. Some of the benefits that past participants said about the Circle program, big benefits of the program. Benefit 1, high quality training by professionals currently working with children and families. And I want to stress that the 4 of us are currently working with children and families. So we ourselves are always looking at that link between all the research and all the knowledge, but actually what works for family, what works for children, what works for schools. also another benefit, it's going to reduce information overload. The problem these days is not that there's not enough information, it's that there's actually too much information and you have to filter that. So that this program is going to reduce information overload, and it's going to give you a roadmap to follow. Another benefit is that you're going to access professional and peer support when you need it. We're going to have a community, and the community is going to be active during the week, so you can access support when you need it, and you're going to learn and get inspired by other like-minded professionals and parents like you. So what's in the Circle program? So there's 6 modules. That's an initial 6 modules: understanding special educational needs, preparing the classroom, same strategies can be applied to home, mastering language supports, understanding sensory sensitivities, promoting positive behavior, and supporting socialization and inclusion. These are the core modules, but that's not all. There's another 4 bonuses. The first bonus is using communication system. And maybe Anna, you can tell us a little bit about that, using communication systems. 1 second, there you are.
Yes. So some children may use communications systems such as apps on devices or the paper-based core boards. So we'll be talking more about those systems and other systems, and we'll be answering your questions about those.
Lovely. And then we're also going to dedicate a module to teaching writing. Ellie.
Yes, so in this module, we'll learn how handwriting typically develops from pre-writing skills to fully legible writing. We'll also talk about how grips develop, and then we'll have a chat about common difficulties and strategies to assist, and then how to access assistive technology through the Department of Education.
Thank you, Ellie. And we are also going to dedicate a module to teaching reading. And if you know me, you know I'm passionate about that. And I tend to introduce teaching reading quite early because with children with developmental delays, for some children it works quite well. We introduce pre-reading activities or reading activities to support language development. Also to mention that in schools we often use a phonics approach to reading, and that may not be the best program for all children. So we are going to talk about different supports that we can put in place before we teach phonics to children, so that we prepare them, give them a good foundation for reading. And the last module, it's going to be working with families. And I have to say that this is a module that normally people don't expect, and generally teachers and educators find it really, really interesting, understanding a little bit more what families are going through, are experiencing, and how to build a very strong partnership between the school and families, because if we work together, obviously that's going to be more beneficial to our children. We need to work as a team. So these are 4 extra modules that are in the program. So let me talk to you about all the practicalities. So the Circle program, how does it work? So it's a 10-month online program spanning from September to June. This is new. In the past, well, at the very beginning, it was kind of a workshop. I've added content throughout the years, but in the past, we taught the same content that we're talking about today, but concentrated in 3 months. But I've been thinking about it, and I thought, no, we're going to do it in 10 months, so we give time to people to actually implement the supports, and we can be there to help you implement all the information in the program. So from September to June, there's going to be live classes twice a month. Most month there's going to be twice classes a month. The first class of the month is going to have a lecture format where we're going to share information with you. It's going to be a lecture on all the different topics. And the second class of the month is going to be a Q&A session to support you implementing that, any questions and anything that the community wants to share. So we're going to meet 2 times a month, and each class lasts for about, I always say, an hour and 15 minutes. We always end up talking a little bit longer than that, but around that length of time. The course is entirely online, and we actually have a dedicated platform. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Kajabi. It's an e-learning platform, very easy to use. But in means that everything is in one place. So if you can't come to the classes live, all the recordings are going to be there, all the materials are going to be there, and the community is going to be there. And by the way, we have an app, so actually you could do the course on your phone or on your iPad. It's going to be very easy to access, so you can access it in real time. I have to say, most participants in the past came to the sessions live, but then a small group of participants did it all on demand, and that worked really well for them, and we were able to interact with them through the community. There's lots of flexibility to engage at your comfort level. I want to make sure that you're comfortable with that. Some people don't mind being on camera and having conversations during the Q&A sessions. Some people don't like that. That's totally okay. There's a lot of flexibility, so it works, again, so you are comfortable with it. So is this course certified? After each module, there's going to be what we call a quiz. It's not going to be a test, it's not going to be an exam, just a simple quiz to make sure that you actually went through the content. If you come to the lecture, you're going to be able to complete that quiz. So that's pretty much, that's straightforward. And in each module, you're going to get a certificate of completion for 3 hours of CPD, continuous professional development hours. If you complete the whole program, it's 30 hours. Now, is this recognized by schools? So you need to speak to your school principal, or you need to speak to your early year setting manager, because it's recognized at their discretion. Having said that, we've run the Circle program 5 times already, and we've had a lot of schools and preschools who participated, and again, the school principals or the early year setting managers did recognize this training. A lot of schools actually funded this training for their staff. So you may want to speak to your school about the program. If you're interested, you can send them a link. I'm going to share it with you in a minute so they can read more about it. But just for you to know that, yes, we are going to give certificate of completions. So imagine if you could be confident providing the best support to your students, if you could see your child or students make progress, if you knew how to navigate challenges when they happen, access support when you need it, and if you knew that all the information you need is there and it's easy to access. So that's what could happen if you join the Circle program. So what is your commitment? Because some people are like, okay, but how many hours do I need to dedicate to this? So just for you to know that it's about 3 hours a month. I want to say that this program is for you, for your students, from the point of view that you're not going to be completing assignments for us. What we want to do is share information with you and support you implementing those supports. So the kind of going through the content and the lectures is going to be about 2 to 3 hours a month. And the rest of the time, you're going to be doing the work that you already do, implementing the supports that you learned about. And by the way, the community is going to be open, so you can interact as much as little as you want. But it's important, I want you to commit to show up, because one of the most valuable assets of this training is the community. We as professionals can share a lot with you, but I know that a lot of you watching tonight are very experienced. So it's about, also, we will encourage all of you also to support each other and share any wins or any information that you find valuable. Maybe share it with others. You need to be committed to make a difference to your students' life. If you're a parent, I want you to take the reins and, as I say it, become your own CEO. Very often when I speak to parents, they say, but I'm a parent, I'm not a therapist. And I know what you're saying, and they need more support, I need more guidance. But I just want to let you know that with the right knowledge and guidance, you can support your child. And that's something that we're going to go work through the Circle program as well, because I really want you as a parent to feel empowered that you can actually support your child. And it doesn't mean that you need to do everything yourself, but it means that you have information also to make decisions. And if you need to access support, that you know where to go. And then you can commit to other outcomes, and you will let us know about that if you join the Circle program in the Circle community. So now let's look at the cost of the program. In past years, and we did the program again, like intense in 3 months, the program costs 497 euros, the whole program, including the community, although there's a lot of changes in the community. And this year, we're going to make it a lot more interactive. And as I said, what we change as well is rather than doing it intensely in a few months, we are doing it now in 10 months. So you get support from September until the end of the school year. So the full price is 50 euros a month for 10 months. But today we are opening the doors of the Circle program. So we have an early bird offer. So for those of you here today until the 7th of September, there's the early bird offer that is 32 euros a month. For 10 months, or I know a lot of schools and preschools, they prefer to, a once-off fee. So if you buy the program in advance, is 290 euros for the whole training and the support within the community, the support from the professionals and your peers within the community. If you join the program, I know you're going to love it. So I'm going to give you my 100% satisfaction guarantee. So you can join the program. And from day one, 30 days, if you think that the program is not for you, if it's not what you expected, that's fine. You send me an email to support@sylviaangel.com. No questions asked. I give you the money back. I have to say we've run the program 5 times and not one participant has asked for the money back. All participants have given beautiful feedback, and obviously that's, we're delighted with that. If you buy the program and you pay monthly installments, you're also going to have the 30-day money back guarantee. But also, if circumstances change for you and 4 months into the program, you say, something happened and you don't want to continue, you can cancel the program anytime. It means you won't be able to access the materials anymore, but I want you to give you peace of mind that you can do that. And if it doesn't work for you, that's totally fine. Whoever is in the Circle program, for me, it's very important that people enjoy it, find it useful, and again, if you think it's not for you, that's totally fine. What other people said about the Circle program, our previous participants? I'm going to read some of the quotes. A principal in Dublin said, "It has given me insights into many aspects of supporting children with additional needs and their families." An SNA said, "It shows practical ways to make small changes that can create a big difference to a child and the learning outcome." A class teacher said, "The expert sessions were all excellent. I would highly recommend it. Teachers, parents, and SNAs should all do it." A feedback from an early years educator: "It has given me renewed confidence in our work with children and families with special needs. Great resources." And one more review: "It has been the most practical and comprehensive course I have completed so far in my career." These are just some of the comments that we got back. And again, people from more than 100 different schools have participated in the Circle program already, preschools and a small number of families. But again, families gave lovely feedback, which it means a lot to us. So this is a summary, a recap. So there's going to be 6 main modules plus 4 other classes. So we're going to do, again, we're going to cover 1 module every month. You have the early bird option until the 7th of September, 32 euros a month for the 6 modules, the 4 bonuses, and the community. And, well, I said at the beginning of the webinar that I had 2 surprises for you. So here are the surprises. Now, we've never done this before, but I'm going to do it this year because I'm very excited about the community part. We've been working behind the scenes and we have something very exciting. So I want as many people as possible to join the program and build a community of parents and professionals, and where we can all share information and support each other. So for those of you joining this year, you're going to have lifetime access to the program. What does that mean? Well, you have to complete the program from September until June, and then you're going to have access to the program, to all the videos, the resources, all the materials in the program. We normally give access for an extra couple of months, and then that's it. But this time, and this time only, we're going to give everyone lifetime access to the program. And those of you who decide to join today until midnight, we're going to give you a one-to-one consultation with any one of us, with psychology, speech therapy, occupational therapy, or early intervention. Those of you who joined today before midnight are going to have access to the one-to-one private consultation with any of us whenever you need it. So I hope that you are, curious about the Circle program. You can go to my website, sylviaangel.com/circle, and there you can find more information. You can review all the content there. And if you have any questions, just let me know. You can put the questions in the chat or pop me an email, and I'll get back to you. So I can see, yes, people are saying thank you. I can see that you're all still there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it that you came here to the webinar. I hope you found it useful, helpful, and you took lots of bits of information that might inspire ideas, for you as a parent and as an educator. And we're all going to say goodnight now. Thank you so much, Anna, for being here today. Thank you. Yes, you're on mute.
Thank you for having me.
Ellie, good night, Ellie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sylvia.
Lovely. And thank you, everyone. Everybody's saying thank you so much in the chat. We really appreciate you being here. That's lovely. Okay, so now I'm going to wish you all good night. If you have any questions about the Circle program, again, go to the website, pop me an email, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So good night, everyone. Hopefully I'll see you inside the Circle. Have a good night. Goodbye.